Welcome to the Tool Review channel. Today we're taking a look at the ChannelLock number 436 6-inch diagonal cutting pliers. Now, as you can see, this is not a new pair of diagonal cutters. This is actually one of the very first tools that I was ever introduced to and shown how to use. This tool has been around with me for quite some time. It belonged to my dad and has obviously been passed on down to me. And we are going to go over some of the functions of the tool. So this being an older ChannelLock product, this is back when they were still stamping the tools, is when this guy was made. And as you can see, this tool does have some wear from over the years of being used. But as you can see right there, you can still clearly see the ChannelLock name and where they are made in Pennsylvania in the United States. And as you can see, I do have some grease coming out of the rivet joint. That is because I did recently oil them up because they were getting a little bit stiff, since I didn't really use them quite a bit as much as I used to. And you can see there's still some stuff and some grime and stuff on the cutting edge. And then coming to this side, it's kind of basically the same. It's just, that little weather. It's got quite a bit of weathering and use to it. And you can see the number 436 stamped into the metal right there as well. And then you can see you have your blue, traditional blue ChannelLock blue handles. And then you can see these been used quite well. And it's for at least the 25 years that I've seen them or been around them, they are still in great condition. Now, I'm not sure they're that old, but as far back as I can remember, these have always been in my dad's toolbox. So I figured I would show you this video and show you what a new pair of the 436 looks like today. So here is the newer pair of the 436 from ChannelLock. Again, basically it's the same pair of pliers, just a little bit different. As you can see, instead of the stamping, they do laser etch. Now, as you can see, at the ChannelLock name in 436, and instead of saying where it's made in Pennsylvania, it just says made in the USA. And then on the back side, it's pretty plain. And as you can see on the older pair, this is the side where the stamping was done, and this side used to have nothing. But now on this one, this is the side where the laser etching is done, and obviously this side has nothing. And you can see you still have the blue ChannelLock handles, and as you can see, my hands are a little bit dirty from that pair right there, and I did transfer some dirt over and some oil and grease, but it does, as you can see, it wipes right off the handles, which is super nice. And as you can see, it has the nice blue dipped handles, which is nice, and they are super comfortable as well. So now we will zoom out here and we'll get to some of the functionality of both these tools and see how well an older pair of ChannelLocks cuts versus a newer pair of ChannelLocks cuts. So we're going to first start off with some stranded wire. So we're going to bring in some 18 gauge stranded wire right here. And we're going to see how well we can cut through this 18 gauge stranded wire. And we'll go ahead and cut through that right there. And as you can see, we have no problem whatsoever cutting through that 18 gauge stranded wire. They have no problem getting through that, these older pair, which is super nice. So we'll go ahead and set those down, and we'll bring in our newer pair. Hopefully they're able to perform just as well as the older pair. And we'll go ahead and cut through that, and as you can see, they are able to perform just as well, if not better, as the older pair with that 18 gauge stranded wire. So we'll go ahead and set those off to the side, and we'll get that wire out of here. And we'll bring in our next stranded wire. So we're going to bring in this 14 gauge stranded wire and see how well we can cut through this. And we'll go ahead and give this a cut. And as you can see right there, it has no problem whatsoever cutting through this 14 gauge stranded wire. So that's the old pair. Let's bring in the new pair and see if they perform just as well. And as you can see right there, they have no problem whatsoever cutting through this 14 gauge stranded wire, which is super nice. And the blades are just as sharp on here as they are on here. And we're going to go ahead and bring in our next wire, which is going to be our 12 gauge stranded wire right here. So we'll go ahead and pick up this older pair of pliers first, and we'll go ahead and cut through that and see how well we can do it. Now, it is going to be a little bit harder to cut through it as the wire gauge gets bigger, and because the diagonal cutters are small. But as you saw, it is able to, these older ones are able to still cut through a 12 gauge stranded wire, and it just shoots the wire off into my background. So I'll go ahead and set those off to the side, and we'll bring in our newer 436s and see if they are able to perform just as well. And as you can see right there, they are able to perform just as well as the older pair. So we'll go ahead and set those off, and we'll bring in our last stranded wire, and we're going to bring in some 10 gauge stranded wire. So this is going to be a little bit thicker than the 12 gauge and obviously a lot thicker than the 18 gauge we started with. So we'll go ahead and see if we can cut through this guy. And it's probably going to be a little bit challenging, but I think we'll be able to get through it. And as you can see right there, we are able to cut through that, and the wire goes flying off into my background and into the abyss. As you see right there, these older ones are still able to get through that 10 gauge stranded wire. The cutting jaws on there are super sharp. So now we'll go ahead and take the new ones, and we should be able to perform just as well as the older ones. And as you see right there, we have no problem whatsoever getting through it. Now you do have to use quite a bit of force to cut through it, but as you saw, we are able to get through that no problem. So that is it for the stranded wire. Now we're going to bring in some solid wire and see how well we can cut through that. So we're going to first start off with some 18 gauge solid wire, which obviously if we went through the 18 gauge stranded wire, solid wire is a little bit thinner than that, so we should be able to get through that. No problem, and as you see right there, we have no problem whatsoever cutting through this 18 gauge solid wire with the older pair of the ChannelLock 436s. Now we're going to bring in the new pair of the 436s and see how well we can cut through that. And as you can see, we cut through this 18 gauge solid wire, no problem whatsoever. So we'll go ahead and set that guy off to the side, and we will bring in our next wire gauge, which is this 14 gauge solid wire, and we'll put these guys down and take the old ones and see how well we can cut through these. And as you see right there, we are able to cut through this 14 gauge solid wire, no problem whatsoever. So we'll go ahead and set that off to the side, and we will test it with the newer 436s right here. And as you see right there, we are able to cut through this 14 gauge solid wire, no problem whatsoever. Now we're going to bring in our 12 gauge solid wire and see how well we can cut through this. As before, we should be able to cut through this no problem. And as you see right there, you definitely have to use a little bit of force to get through that, but we are able to cut through this 12 gauge solid wire, no problem whatsoever, as it shoots into my background. So we're going to go ahead and test the newer ones right here. So we'll go ahead and cut through there, and as you see, it cuts just as well as the older version of the 436s. Now the last thing I'm going to bring in is some 18.5 thermostat wire, and we're going to see how well we can cut through this. Just to see how many conductors we can cut through at once. Obviously 18 gauge shouldn't, I feel the tools should be able to cut through it no problem, but you never know with the 6-inch pair of diagonal cutters. And as you can see right there, you're definitely going to have to squeeze a little bit on there to do it, but you are able to cut through it no problem. So we'll go ahead and cut through that one more time, and as you see right there, we had no problem cutting through that, but you definitely have to use quite a bit of force to get through that. So we'll go ahead and test out this new pair of 436s, and we'll go ahead and cut through that. And as you can see right there, the wire definitely doesn't go shooting like it does with the old ones, but you are able to, go shooting right there, but you are able to get through that thermostat wire no problem whatsoever. So we'll go ahead and clear all that stuff out of the background, and we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about these. So as you can see right here, this is the newer pair of the 436s. Oddly enough, these aren't listed on ChannelLock's website, so I'm not sure at the time of filming this video if they still produce these, but I was able to find them online through some of the retailers that ChannelLock sells through, which was kind of weird. I just didn't see it on their website. I'm not sure if I was looking in the right place. Could be there. Maybe they just took it off and they don't make them anymore. I'm not sure, but I was still able to pick up this newer pair of the 436s right here. And then obviously I still have the old pair of 436 diagonal cutters that I inherited from my dad from when I was a kid. This was, I just always remember using this, whether it was, setting up Christmas decorations outside, zip tying wires together or whatever we were doing. It seems like we always were using these to cut the zip ties and stuff like that, and doing just, miscellaneous work around the house. We'd always seem to be using these. And I just decided, maybe to give them some love and use them again, and was surprised that I was still able to pick up a relatively new pair of the 436s today from ChannelLock. Obviously, they're a little bit different, but as you can see, they still get the job done, no problem whatsoever. So overall, I definitely could recommend these to anyone. ChannelLock definitely does make a nice product, and you know me, I'm a big Made in the USA guy, and these are definitely a high-quality tool. And as you can see, they do last over time. The cutting edges definitely aren't dull on here, but then again, I've never really used them on anything that would, dull the cutting edge, and I don't really use them that often. All you really see is just the patina from them being used outside, and, kept in a toolbox out in the garage for a while and not really being cleaned or anything. So that's just, what happens when you leave tools outside. And, I didn't know at the time that, you take care of your tools if you want to make them last. But as you can see, they last fairly well for the amount of time that I've had them. And then, obviously the newer pairs, it's going to be new. It's going to look pretty nice for a while until you really start to use it. But overall, like I said, I easily recommend these to anybody if you're looking for, a 6-inch pair of diagonal cutters. Now, I'm pretty sure ChannelLock might have a newer version of these. I'm not too familiar with the product number, but I'm sure they do have a 6-inch, or I did review the 7-inch pair. So if you're looking for maybe a smaller, compact pair of diagonal cutters, these are probably something you want to look at. And with that being said, that's all I have for this video. So if you are new to the channel and you want to see more content like this, please feel free to hit that subscribe button, and you will see more content like this. And if you did enjoy the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up as well. But that's all I have for this video, so thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next video to be uploaded.